You know, I think I've been overcomplicating auth. Who said it has to be hard? I've been playing around with BetterAuth, and honestly, email-based login with one-time passwords feel like a future. If you feel the same, let's dive into how to set up this super clean passwordless auth flow using React Router v7, Drizzle, and of course BetterAuth. Alright, so I'm starting off with pre-configured React Router setup. I already got installed Tailwind CSS, ShadCN, ESLint, and validation with Zod, just to save some setup time. But you can fully follow this through with a fresh React Router template. So, when we have our project running, let's go to BetterAuth docs, and under installation, we have our first package to install. Let's copy this command and paste it in our terminal. When that's done, let's scroll downwards to setting up our environment variables. And here we can press a button generate secret. When we generate it, let's just copy it. And in our project, we create a new file called .env. Here we just paste in our created secret. Now when we have our secret, let's go to BetterAuth and search for a Drizzle adapter. Let's press on it, and this code snippet we can just copy and paste it in our project. Under services, I will create a new file called auth server ts. And this can be called anything, and it can be anywhere in your code base, but I just prefer to have it in services for organization. And now let's paste in the snippet. And here we get the error that we don't have a database, so we can just remove this and create our own database. Going to app directory, let's create a new folder called db, and inside db a new file called index.ts. Here we will initialize our database connection, so let's go to Drizzle, and under Drizzle we search for database connection. Database connection with Drizzle, let's scroll downwards, and here we have a function which we will copy, paste, and also we will import it from DrizzleOrm. We currently don't have DrizzleOrm, so let's also install that, pnp I DrizzleOrm. When that's done, we can change Bun SQLite. Since we're not using that, we're using Better SQLite 3. And here for file, we will rename it to db SQLite 3. Also, the last package we will need to install is pnpmi into dev dependencies DrizzleKit, and we will use DrizzleKit for all our migrations. When DrizzleKit installation is done, let's go back to our db folder, and inside we will create a new folder called Schema. In Schema, we will also create again index.ts file, and here we will just export default an empty object for now. It does not matter now because BetterAuth will create our schema. Back on index.ts, we can now import our schema from schema folder, and we will also use it here as schema. Let's also export this, and now under auth server ts we can import our database connection, and that's it. Our BetterAuth Drizzle adapter connection is done. Now to get proper migrations, let's go back to Drizzle website and search for config.ts. We will need this Drizzle config file in our project, so let's just copy this code snippet, go back to our project, and create a new file called drizzle config.ts. Let's paste it in. And as we can see, we need to change a couple things here. So let's start with dialect, which we will choose to have SQLite. And then our schema is under app db schema index.ts file. And for out, I will choose to have it also under our db migrations. And the out is just where our migrations will stay at. Now the last thing is that we need db credentials. And here we can choose our URL, and it will be a file. So we write file, and we say that our file is called db SQLite 3. And this should be exactly the same as we have here in our db index file. Now when we have our Drizzle config ready, let's go back to BetterAuth, and we can scroll downwards to see how to generate our schemas. Let's copy this and paste it in our terminal. I already know that we will need a config flag, and in our config flag we define where exactly our auth functionality is in. So under app services auth server ts, and for output we put where exactly we want our schema to be generated at. So in our scenario we have it under schema index.ts. And now let's press enter. It will ask if we want to override this file, and we press yes. And now the schema was successfully generated. We can check it in schema index.ts file, and here we have our user, session, account, and verification created. Awesome. Now for the last step, we need to create migrations and apply them. So as we can see in BetterAuth documentation, we can just copy one by one command line. Let's copy and paste generate. And now when migrations were generated, we can also copy this command line to apply the migration. The migration was successfully created, And we can test it using Drizzle Studio. So let's create a new terminal, and here we can write npx drizzle, and instead of migrate, we write studio. This will start up Drizzle Studio, and you can open the link. And here under local Drizzle Studio, we can see our migrations applied. So we have account, session, user, and verification. Now, when we have our whole database functionality working, let's go back to auth server TS, and here we will install email OTP plugin. So let's go back to BetterAuth and write email OTP. And here we have a snippet on how to use our email OTP plugin. So let's just copy and paste it in. We also need the imports, so let's copy and paste that also in. And now we can see here we have a send verification OTP function. So let's just console log sending OTP to email and with the OTP code. And that's it for our plugin setup. Let's now go to our index.ts file. And in our index.tsx file, you can see I already have a small code ready for form. And let's go to our terminal and run this project. So npm dev. And now when we have our project running, we can see our form. And it's nothing special here. We just import a form from React Router. And then we have input and button imported from components UI input or button. And it's just ShadCN components and nothing special behind the hood. Let's start with export const action. It will be async function. And we just return an empty object for now. It's missing types, so let's import the types from route action args. And to get our form data, we will call const form data equal to await request dot form data. And to get exact value from our input email, we will also have another variable called email form data get email. Now when that's working, we can write await auth, and we import it from our auth.server API, and then we send our verification OTP. And this function will accept a body of email as string, because this is currently form data entry value or null. And then we also type of sign-in. And this can be, of course, handled differently, like, for example, ZOD validation here. But for simplicity, I'll just use as string. Now, let's try submitting our form, hello@gmail.com. And here we see in our console that sending sign-in OTP to hello@gmail.com and our OTP code. We currently don't have where to put it, so let's create a new input called OTP and enter your OTP. And this input we don't want to show all the time, which means we will create a step flow. So let's create a variable called step, and let's call it email for now, hard-coded. Inside our form, we will pass a input which is type hidden, and it will take a value of step and will be named step. Now for our input, we can check if step is equal to OTP step. We can display it. And now for step, it's impossible to be OTP step because we have it hard-coded. When here inside the function, we can return step OTP step. And inside our index, we can now get action data from route components props. And here we see we have step. So now let's just use it, step or email. And we have it as email as in a starting point. Now in our action, let's get the step and also OTP code. And we want to send the verification OTP only when the step is equal to email. Now when that's done, we also need a way to sign in with this OTP code. So there's another function called await auth.api sign in email OTP. And this accepts body of email as string, and OTP as string. For this function, we will also pass another prop called return headers as true. And we need this because we will set the headers ourselves from action. Now we can create const result equal to this function, and let's console log it to see what it returns. Let's also return an empty object for now. Now going to our form, let's see if it works. We got our code and our input now appeared because we are on the step OTP step. Let's enter the code and we get our headers. So results contain headers and response, The response is the user itself, and the headers is for setting BetterAuth session. And now when we have that working, let's remove console log. And for return, we will return a redirect, which we take from React Router. And let's redirect user to dashboard. And we will need to also pass the headers. And the headers is equal to result headers. Now, we currently don't have a dashboard route, so let's go to routes and create a new file called dashboard.tsx. And inside the dashboard.tsx, we will just export a simple dashboard page, which will return h1 dashboard. Let's also export default the dashboard. Save. Now, going back to our index.tsx, we can open inside the browser inspect elements and check our storage. Currently, we can remove all the cookies, and we have nothing here. So let's try logging in. Hello, gmail.com. We send a OTP request. Here we get our code. Let's enter it in our OTP field and let's submit it. Now we did not get any cookies, but if we press refresh, here we see our BetterAuth session token. We can also validate this in Drizzle Studio. And now in our Drizzle Studio, we can see two users because I misspelled the first time, and the second time we actually got our user correctly. Going back to our project and dashboard.tsx, I will show you also how to protect the dashboard routes. So let's create an export const of loader, which also be async, and we return just an empty object for now. To get session, we will need request from our loader, and it's also a type of route, taking it from dashboards and loader args. And then we can create a new variable called const session equal to await auth, and we also import it from auth API, get session, and it expects to get headers, so we can headers, and we pass these headers from request headers. Now, if we console log the session, we can verify that our session returns the session and the user. So now, if we write if there's no session, we just return redirect back to the index route. Also, don't forget to import this. And that's it. Now we can check if we remove our session and refresh the page, we get redirected back to here. Now let's try going to dashboard manually. And it doesn't allow us, and it redirects back to the index page. And yeah, that's it. We now got a fully working auth flow using email-based OTP login with BetterAuth and Drizzle. Hopefully it was easy enough to follow along and you picked something useful. Thanks for watching, and until next time, peace out.